Yeah, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Ushi on Twitter. She actually coined that term for me. She came up with at one point, she saw about me wrestling a bear and that I'd been shot before and I used to be a pro wrestler and all this. And she came up with the nickname of the Chuck Norris of InfoSec.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Heroes, an Iron Scales podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with security leaders and practitioners and other influential InfoSec stars, so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by Iron Scales, the most powerfully simple email security platform. And I'm your host, Brendan Rudd. And now, let's get into the show. Hey, Phillip. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brendan. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes. I'm excited to chat with you today about your history and what you're doing in InfoSec today. But before we begin, would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about you, your background, and what you're up to these days?
Sure. And thanks for having me as a guest. It's an honor to be joining your show. So my name is Phillip Wylie. I'm currently working as a senior cloud pen tester for a large national bank in the US. I've been working in pen testing for a little over 9 years, 17 total years in cybersecurity, and 23 years total IT and cybersecurity experience. And also I teach ethical hacking and web app pen testing at Dallas College. And so the teaching and presenting at conferences and doing workshops and mentoring are some passions of mine.
And you have a very unconventional entrance into cybersecurity, which I love. You actually used to be a professional wrestler for a few years. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about those endeavors and your infamy there.
Sure. And part of the reason I really like to share that story is, there's a lot of people that struggle with the confidence thinking, can I be in cybersecurity? Can I work in IT? Can I be a developer? And a lot of people don't have that confidence. And I like to share that because when I graduated high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living. I did not have any computer experience, any of that. So when I graduated high school, some of my high school friends said, hey, you should be a pro wrestler because pro wrestling was really big in the Dallas area. The Von Erich family and all that was very popular. So I thought that sounds cool. So because I was a power lifter and a fairly big muscular guy, so I figured I'd give it a shot because I didn't have any other plans what I was going to do with my life. So I went to wrestling school and wrestled for a few years. And during that time, I had some matches on television. I've wrestled tag teams such as the Road Warriors, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express. I've wrestled Mick Foley before and several others, pretty big names in the industry.
And tell us a little bit about your nickname, the Chuck Norris of InfoSec.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Ushi on Twitter. She actually coined that term for me. She came up with at one point, she saw about me wrestling a bear and that I'd been shot before and I used to be a pro wrestler and all this. And she came up with the nickname of the Chuck Norris of InfoSec.
And when did you decide to get into cybersecurity from wrestling, and what challenges did you have to endure along the way?
Yeah, I never thought I would ever be in security or working as an ethical hacker doing pen testing because when I graduated high school, that wasn't a known career path. And so I was working as a professional wrestler. I wasn't making enough to make a living off of, so I was working part-time as a bouncer or working full-time as a bouncer, and then wrestling was part-time. So I got married in '88 and I needed a more stable income. So I did all sorts of stuff. I worked manual labor jobs, doing different types of blue collar work. I worked in retail sales. I worked in restaurants and all that sort of thing. I just really couldn't find anything I liked and anything that paid that well. So I went to a trade school and learned AutoCAD and became a CAD drafter. And so through my CAD drafting career, I got exposure to computers. Before that, I really didn't have experience with computers. So I taught myself how to build computers and then eventually took a Novell NetWare operating systems course to transition over to being a sysadmin, because during my AutoCAD career, a lot of these companies didn't have their own IT staff. So I would figure out how to fix some of these things. And so I found out I had a more natural talent for the computer side. Like that, I taught myself how to build computers, took a Novell NetWare course that was a certification course for the CNE, and then got my first job working in IT doing a server rollout in Windows 95 upgrade for this one large company that was like a reseller of computer systems and software. And so that's how I got my foot in the door. I worked as a sysadmin for 6 years, and then I got interested in security. And so I ended up moving over to the security team. So when I first moved over, they had us all doing network security. So we were doing firewall, intrusion detection systems, maybe some vulnerability scanning. And then the company hired a CISO. And when he came in, he separated us into different groups. And I fortunately got put on the AppSec team. And so through the AppSec team, that's where I learned about pen testing, and I got to do some web application vulnerability scanning. And I went to some of the different vendor events, because one of the resellers that we got our AppScan web app vulnerability scanner through, they did some of these vendor events where they would show us how to use the tool, some basics about web application vulnerability scanning and that sort of thing. So I got familiar with that. And so I got laid off from my job in 2012. I applied for a pen testing role, and that's when I moved into pen testing.
So that was interesting. You mentioned 6 years in a particular role. Can you just remind me what was the role?
Yeah, I was a system administrator. So I was administering NetWare servers, Windows NT servers, and some Linux systems. I was also doing DNS, DHCP administration as well. And so this really helped me once I got into security and pen testing, because having understanding those systems makes you better trained to defend those systems and then break into those systems as a penetration tester.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question for me. I was gonna say, what value did you see staying for such a long time in a role? Because I know in today's world, people are super eager to wham bam, move to the next role. Like, people don't have the patience and grit to stay in a role and kind of master a skill set. So I guess that was your foundational building blocks to becoming a proficient, respected pen tester.
Yeah, one of the things there too is it was a much different world in the late 80s, the late 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't as many different roles. I mean, because a lot of companies didn't have their own security teams. Because when I first went to work for the company that I was doing the sysadmin work for, the network guys were managing the firewalls, because I built a couple of servers that we installed the new firewalls on. So a different team managed that, and then they eventually started a security group. And there wasn't so many different things in security. You didn't have threat intelligence or threat hunting. You pretty much had defense. Everyone was blue team, and there wasn't a lot of variation. Back then, you were either doing like network security. AppSec was out then, and then you had like people doing the compliance and GRC related stuff. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity. So, you could be in one area and it was fun, and you really didn't have to move. And what was really cool at that time is we got to work with some really neat technologies, because when I started out, Active Directory wasn't a thing yet. So we were using Novell Directory Services. It was like one of the first directory services. Prior to that was Banyan Vines, but with Novell Directory Services, that was what most companies used. And then you had Active Directory come along. So we got to use some cool things. We got to do clustering with Windows NT servers and working with SQL servers. Working for a mortgage company, we had some systems that had to access mainframes. So we used this software that I think Novell's product was SAA. It was like a Novell or NetWare SAA gateway that allows you to connect to mainframes. And then Microsoft had their SNA gateways that you were able to connect to mainframes. So there's some really cool technologies and stuff. And telephony was really starting to take off then, the computerized telephony systems. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. So there really wasn't a reason to move real quick. And now you have pen testing. So everyone that wants to get into IT or security, testing sounds really cool, and that's what everyone gravitates towards. So I guess there really wasn't as much distraction back then, a lot of reason to change and stuff, but there's so many things you could do nowadays that you can understand why it's hard for people to keep their attention and want to do one thing,
Yeah, I mean, what advice would you give to folks wanting to get into pen testing? Would you tell them to somewhat mirror your path, or would you say there are shortcuts or smart cuts?
There is a shorter path to it because basically what you need, the things that I knew, you may not have to know as in much detail, but understanding operating systems, you need to understand Windows, Linux operating systems, because if you hack into a system, you need to understand the command line. You need, even if you got like a access to the desktop, you need to understand that operating system. So you have to understand that, because if you get command line access to a Windows server and you don't know the command line, you're going to be doing a lot of Googling trying to figure things out. So you don't necessarily have to put 6 years in the system administrative role to be a pen tester. And if I really would have, if pen testing would have been an option, I could have moved into pen testing sooner. It's just something that I didn't realize. But you just, knowledge wise, you need it. The amount of years, you don't have to put all those years into it to get into pen testing. And you don't have to spend any time in any certain role. So it's just, you can train and go right into it. And I don't try to discourage anyone from doing that, because, they may get into some role and they work in some area, get discouraged with security or IT in general. So I would say, yeah, if you want to be a pen tester, you just need to learn the technology. You don't have to work as a sysadmin. I would say you'd want to have the sysadmin level knowledge or skill set.
Would you say that this role is like very much hyped, maybe overhyped, and perhaps some people are not really a good fit for it? And what would you suggest or recommend for folks thinking about getting into pen testing?
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be overhyped because people, see the movies and it's just a bunch of hacking in and stuff. You get to do some hacking. There's some boring, mundane things you have to do as a penetration tester, because you're having to check the cipher strengths of these servers. You run your vulnerability scans and you have to go through and validate those vulnerabilities. So that can kind of be boring. And some of the things that you write in your report in regards to some of the low level findings can be boring. So that can be boring at first. And there's a lot of hype to it. It sounds really cool. And that's what really draws people to it. Everyone wants to be a hacker. But I would say, really honestly, if you're considering a career in cybersecurity, I would look at all the different areas. Find some blue team training stuff, take that. If you've got like an IT background, you understand how to use computers, maybe do something, not necessarily have to get the certification, but check out something like the Security Plus, get an idea of security. And you're not wasting your time, because everything you learn technology wise can be leveraged as a penetration tester. So, if you learn Security Plus, that's going to help you. You learn Network Plus, learning the networking is going to help. So I would say go to conferences, maybe take some short courses, or use the free things first, because like I&E has their EJPT certification, you have to pay for the cert, but the course is for free. So you can get their starter pass and get their junior pen testing cert. And there's other things out there free or low cost, like the Cyber Mentor has some really good courses. So find some of the less expensive stuff and get in there and see if you can pick it up, because some people are cut out for more other areas of security, and not everyone that tries pen testing likes it. So, watch some videos, attend some different conferences and webinars, and just see if you like it. Try Hack Me. That's a real good place to start out, because it's very educational, and they take you from a very low level and help progress you along the way. So there's a lot of good resources. So, do something less expensive or free to see if it's something you're interested in before you invest a lot of time in it. And honestly, I would check out some of the other areas of security, because like threat intelligence is really cool. Threat hunting, this is kind of part of the incident response path. You can start out as a SOC analyst. You start doing incident response. You could even do digital forensics, and you can even go into some of the threat hunting that you learn from those skills. So there's a lot of really cool areas that people don't even think about. They think that red teaming or pen testing are the only fun roles, but there's other areas too. I'd say check out what you like, because if there's something you're really passionate about, you're putting more time and effort studying. It doesn't hurt to investigate and check out the different options. And like I said, anything you learn technology or security wise is going to give you experience and carry over, to other areas.
Speaking of testing the waters and going through your journey, I was reading through an article you sent me from 2019. I think it was called The Unusual Journeys into InfoSec. And there was a few questions that I wanted to fast forward 3 years later, maybe going on 4 now. So one of the questions was like, you've been in InfoSec for a while now. What do you see as the biggest challenges for people trying to break into the industry? And the second part to the question was, how have these changed from when you first started. So if we fast forward to today, would you say the challenges have changed? Have they gotten better? Have you seen solutions? What can you speak to in terms of what you said back then or what you were asked back then?
Sure. I would say, as far as trying to get started, I would think it's probably more difficult now than it was. And I'm talking going back to 2012 when I got my first pen testing job. I did have some security experience that did help me get in, but I know it gets a little more difficult now because what you have, although there's a lot of jobs that are not filled, whenever I applied for that pen testing role and I didn't have all the boxes checked, I didn't have pen testing experience, which they could have very easily passed me over, but there was less people that knew of that field back then. So nowadays there's a lot more people and a lot more people that are going for those jobs. So that makes it a little more difficult. But on the other hand, there's a lot more, since when I first started pen testing, there's a lot more resources and a lot more lower price resources. There's a lot of great content creators out there. So that kind of is helpful in that area. And the experience thing is really what makes it hard for people to get in. But there's some ways to get around that, or ways that can help. So like bug bounties and like Cobalt Core is pen test as a service, whereas the bug bounties you get paid per bug. Cobalt Core will pay you per pen test. So you make 1,500 US dollars per pen test. And I think there's like maybe 30 hours to do the pen test in. That may be right, but I know it's $1,500. So you do the pen test, you're guaranteed money. So that's more appealing. And with those methods, with BugCrowd, you can sign up for HackerOne. You don't have to have pen testing experience. You start getting experience. With Cobalt, you don't necessarily have to have the experience, but you get in the interview if you can explain how to do a pen test, how to hack certain things. They give you like a challenge, like maybe a web application to pen test. If you could perform that pen test successfully, then you get in and you get work. And so that doesn't require that you have to have experience. So things that you gain from doing like Hack the Box and CTFs and those sort of things can help you get in the foot in the door. So those are some of the areas that are actually kind of make it a little bit easier now than the way it used to be. We didn't have a lot of those opportunities back then. Or some of the things like bug bounties were fairly new, really not catching on much then, but these are some ways that people can get in. Other ways that I've seen has been very creative. Joe Helly, the mayor, and some of these other people, they did a lot of content creation, and that brought visibility. So when some of these people went to interview for a job, people were aware of them. Oh yeah, I've seen your videos on how to do this or that. So people they know how to do pen testing and know different hacking techniques based on the content they're created. So that's one way people can get in. And also a lot of people are doing write-ups on Hack the Box or Try Hack Me. They'll build a GitHub repository and post their reports on there, or set up something on Medium, do walkthroughs of different systems that they've performed pen test or hacked into. Now, this is all stuff that's like Hack the Box, so you have to make sure it's retired boxes that you can write up on, but employers able to see the way you think and the way you write reports and stuff and get a kind of an idea of your skill set. And back to the validation of the bug bounty thing being helpful. The last summer I was interviewing for a pen test job, and I was talking to this really famous boutique pen test firm, and the hiring manager that was interviewing me told me that it's a lot easier to find web app pen testers because of bug bounties. And so that's not to discourage people, say there's too many people doing it. That's not the case, because I find places that are still needing web app pen testers, that's just showing people that experience are getting their foot in the door from doing the bug bounties.
So you also mentioned, I think in that interview, that networking was super important. And you also shared with me, and I know that you have like almost 30,000 followers on Twitter. What was the catalyst to you pushing into that influencer role on Twitter? And not to say Twitter is the only place you should network, but where else would you recommend, and how would you recommend network, and any kind of recommendations of communities or anything like that? But maybe if you want to just start first with like, how did you get into that influencer realm on Twitter?
Yeah, kind of how I did it is interesting, because right now I broke a couple weekends ago, I broke 30,000 followers on Twitter. But right before the DEF CON in 2018, I had 2,500 followers. And so what really happened, there was a lot of things happening in 2018. I started teaching ethical hacking at Dallas College. I started the Pwn School Project, which is a educational meetup that I run that's cybersecurity focused. and also become a bug crowd ambassador. And my want and desire to help people, because prior to that, I was doing some mentoring and I'd share resources with people, say, here, this is good stuff to go through if you're wanting to learn to be a pen tester. So that's how I got started. And when I became a bug crowd ambassador, then I tried to share resources with people to help them get started in bug bounty, so they could eventually get into pen testing, or if they could be a really good bug hunter, they could make good money that way. So a lot of it was through helping people. I was speaking on panels for Bug Crowd, doing webinar series. So that started to help build up my following. And also LinkedIn, I was really doing similar stuff there on LinkedIn, although a lot more active on Twitter, because there's a lot of things you just don't constantly post about everything on LinkedIn that you would like on Twitter. And so resharing resources, like on Friday, they do Follow Fridays where you recommend people to follow. So I know a lot of people new in the industry are trying to find good people to follow that they can learn from. So a lot of that. So a lot of where mine comes from is the mentoring and trying to help people that help me build up my following. And that goes to show, if you're a good researcher, you got some good resources that you're sharing, you're able to build up a big following. Another good example is DFR. She has DFIR, Digital Forensic Incident Response related resources that she shares. And she's got a really nice website, and she would share all these resources on Twitter and LinkedIn. So she was sharing resources, and that helped her following. She's helping people, and it also helped her following. So there's different ways to do that. If you find resources, and a lot of people doing this or people just getting started, they're sharing resources. So it doesn't mean you have to be a guru or high level experienced person or really highly skilled to be able to do this, that you can share resources. Just get out there and helping people. And LinkedIn is another great place as well. It's interesting too. I've got I've got probably not even half the followers on LinkedIn, but some things there's a better reaction towards. So if I'm advertising something on there, marketing a conference I'm speaking at, sometimes it may have more results than what Twitter does. It just depends on the topic at times. But I would say those, as far as social media, you definitely want a LinkedIn profile. Treat it as your resume. Don't get on LinkedIn and treat it like it's Facebook. Try to stay professional and don't cause drama. And, LinkedIn is your online resume. So make sure you keep it up to date, include all your skills, because LinkedIn is nice because you can also export into a resume. So you keep that up to date. You've always got your resume that you can easily export. So I'd say really focus on those two items. Also be involved in different meetups. So go to your local security group meetings, the conferences, that sort of thing. That's a really good way to network. That's probably one of the areas that is probably works better for me than even some of the social media platforms, just getting out at conferences and speaking to people. I've met people at conferences that have invited me to come do training or speak at their conferences just from networking. Just get out there and talk to people. Once you build up, once you get a good sized network and people know you, then it's really easy to find a job. I've had at least 4 or 5 jobs that were direct referrals that I knew, that was able to get my resume to the hiring manager. A good example is the bank I work for now. I'd got the job there and I'd applied at US Bank. I actually applied at Bank of America and never got called for an interview. I applied online, doing the normal steps that anyone else would do. Never got called. And about a year later, after I was already working at this other bank and I was well qualified for the job, then a recruiter found my resume and reached out to me. So if I would have known someone internally, then they could have got my resume to the hiring manager, because you don't know how the algorithm is going to work on LinkedIn or the different hiring platforms, because they may be looking for certain keywords or phrases that you're not using for what you're doing. But if you know someone inside, it doesn't have to be a hiring manager. It could just be someone that works there, that they can get your resume to HR or a hiring manager. You're going to have a lot better shot at getting a job.
Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by IronScales, an AI-powered, self-learning email security platform that helps security professionals proactively prevent, detect, and remediate phishing attacks in a matter of seconds, not hours or days. And we have an exclusive offer for our podcast listeners. Discover dormant phishing threats in your organization's mailboxes. Get a free 90-day scan back with a detailed report. Integrate in seconds with 2 clicks via API to Microsoft Office 365 and see what your current email security is missing. Go to ironscales.com/free scan to learn more.
For sure, networking is key. And you also, told me that you are part of a few other nonprofits and communities. You mentioned Innocent Lives Foundation, Hacking is Not a Crime, and the Pawn School project. So what inspired you to get involved there, and who else could it be for? Is it something that entry level IT and InfoSec folks should get involved with as well, or is it more just your hobby and passion?
It's good for anyone, and it's a good way to network. And like the Innocent Lives Foundation, they help unmask anonymous child predators. And this is really important because through the pandemic, a lot of children are online more because they weren't able to go to school. Their parents are trying to keep them safe, so they don't let them go outside and play with other kids. So they were online even more. And so there's people, just the way adults get social engineered, these child predators can social engineer children. And, children have been abducted through interactions online, but the Innocent Lives Foundation, they have volunteers, and I think currently the volunteer pool is full. But if anyone's interested, keep trying back. But with these volunteers use OSINT skills to help track down these child predators. The information is turned over to law enforcement, and they try to track down and arrest these anonymous child predators. So that's a really great cause. One of the ways you can help is I don't do the OSINT type of stuff. I leverage my network and my following by advertising this stuff, bringing awareness. So just telling people about this organization, they're able to donate to it because they need money to operate. It's a nonprofit organization. So they're not actually making money. All their money is through donations. So bringing awareness. So and there's other great organizations that you can help as well, but I like this one, and I'm one of the ambassadors. And so if someone wants to help, you don't even necessarily have to be a volunteer or ambassador. You could just go follow them, retweet or share information about the organization with people to bring awareness. And I would do fundraisers over the years, like through my Meetup, the Pawn School project. I would do t-shirt fundraisers to raise money for Innocent Lives Foundation. And that was a way for people to get t-shirts for the Pawn School project and the money go to a good cause. And so through that, there was a really big donation that someone gave earlier in the year due to one of my t-shirt fundraisers. They found out about Innocent Lives Foundation and donated a large sum of money to the organization. So just bringing awareness alone is huge. And then Hacking is Not a Crime is the cause there is the media over the years has equated hacking to cybercrime. And hacking is used for bug bounties, security research, and pen tests. It's a needed skill set, but the media years and years ago, after some cybercrime, coined the term or took the term hacker and assigned it to cyber criminals. So Hacking is Not a Crime was started in 2018. Brian McInich, one of the co-founders, started out just printing stickers to take to DEF CON that said hacking is not a crime, just to bring awareness. And then Chloe Misdoggy partnered with him last year, and it went beyond the sticker campaign, and now they're actually writing letters to the media, trying to encourage them to use different verbiage for cyber criminals, and also talking to different government entities, trying to work with them on, encourage them on laws that help protect researchers and not criminalize cybersecurity researchers and that sort of thing. So it's also working with the government and that. So it's gone pretty well. There's a lot of big names that are associated with it in the industry, and anyone that people want to be an advocate, then you need know someone within the organization. But the advocates are basically going out, bringing awareness, retweeting information about hacking is not a crime. If they speak at conferences, sharing with that information or different groups they may be part of. And the Pawn School project came out of my teaching efforts. Some of my students wanted to know what were the next steps to learning more ethical hacking related topics. And so I started the Pawn School project. And it evolved into other cybersecurity topics because a lot of people are trying to get in the field. Not everyone's trying to get into pen testing. And then sometimes you may have to start somewhere else. So I ran 2 in-person meetups each month. And in 2019, I started offering my college ethical hacking class online, streaming it through Zoom. And so then I also started offering the Pawn School project meetings remotely. That started like in February 2019. So when the pandemic hit, we were already prepared, and it was like 100% virtual until last month. We had our first in-person Pawn School meeting in Denton, Texas, and then we've had another one this month. Not sure when or if we're going to go back to in person for the Dallas meetings, but I see the value of streaming it, because streaming it, it's open to people that are not just local. And then also I can have speakers from around the world present at these Pwn School meetings.
Mm-hmm. And you also like mentoring, correct?
Correct.
So what would you say are the most frequently asked questions you get as a mentor?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different questions I get, but one of the things people always ask is, do I need a degree or do I need certifications to be a pen tester? And you don't have to. They do help you get your foot in the door better, easier sometimes. So if you've got like a pen testing cert, that may help get you in. Otherwise, if you don't have the experience, that's helpful. So and then degrees are not as looked at for pen testing, because it's more hands-on technical skills that people are getting from some of these certifications, that's looked at more often. And then just kind of stuff I shared about how to get experience, like the bug bounties and Cobalt and that sort of thing, to get experience, are the main things that I get asked. And a lot of people say, where do I start? So if you've got no background in IT or any of that, you need to, start out and learn the basics, because you have to understand the technology before you can protect it and before you can break into it. So just building stuff is very helpful to learn to pen test. If you can install a Windows server or Linux server, then understanding how that technology works, then you may understand, how it's secured and how it can be exploited if it's misconfigured.
You mentioned like free resources being really available in kind of communities. Could you maybe list 3 or 5, of your top 5 resources that you think would really benefit people?
Yeah, one of the things I would look at is Try Hack Me and Hack the Box have some free content. Hack the Box can be a little more difficult. Hack the Box is where you're going to use what you've learned. Try Hack Me is a little more educational. Also, INE Starter Pass, you can get their EJPT course. The cert you have to pay for, but the course is free. You could go through there and learn that content. The Cyber Mentors got some really inexpensive training, but if you go on YouTube, his YouTube page, he's got like his complete pen testing course on YouTube for free. So those free that's a really good place to start. And his content is really good. He actually works as a pen tester, and he does a lot of content creation, owns his own company, has been highly successful. So those are some good areas to start out with. Start with the free stuff out there and work through that. And then, because a lot of times if you go out and you're going to buy an expensive course, you may not be ready for it yet. So once you go through those free and low cost courses, then you'll build up the skills you need to start taking on the more advanced courses.
And like, are these resources kind of categorized blue team, red team, or is it like a mix of everything?
The ones I mentioned were mainly red team. So now there's another resource, DFIR Diva, has a website out there that lists a lot of content related around to digital forensics. I think she also has some other information there too, but the red team focused. But the blue team stuff I'm not as aware of, because that's really not what I teach, but there are some free things out there that are available as well. And especially like around the pandemic, there were a lot of people were sharing different free resources out there.
As an experienced pen tester, what resources do you lean on to improve your skills or to continue your self-learning?
Yeah, some of the ones I like is I'm a big fan of the offensive security courses. Those are really good courses, and their certifications are really good, helping you get the foot in the door. Pentester Academy, I think it's one of the best resources for the price. It's pretty inexpensive. I think it's like $30, $29 a month. I think if you pay for it a year in advance, and it may be like $50 otherwise. And then there's also Pentesterlab Com. And Pentester Lab is a good resource for learning how to do web app pen testing. And it's like all the labs and stuff are online. If you get the professional version, you get more with it. There are some free stuff available there. Also, portswigger.net, the creators of Burp Suite, they've got a free web application security academy that teaches web app pen testing. And it's totally free, and there's labs included. So that's another great resource. And something that I use. The Pentester Lab is something that gets very advanced, and the Portswigger course that gets up to very advanced level too. So it takes you from beginner all the way up to advanced.
And I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to folks wanting to switch from other professions or industries, even perhaps from IT, who want to get into cybersecurity?
If you're switching from IT, it's going to be an easier transition than someone totally outside of technology. So, if you're working, for instance, if you were like in a network operations center, then you could transition to a SOC because now you're just not looking for latencies or network problems. You're looking for malicious security issues on a network. So that's a good place. Having those IT skills, the less skills you have, it's going to take a little more learning. So if you're like in desktop support, a system administrator, then you can go in some of the operation side of security where you're working with firewalls and intrusion detection systems and managing some of these different servers that use different security softwares.
And what about pen testing tools? How have they developed over the years?
The tool availability, I say, is probably a lot better than it used to. When I was starting out as a pen tester, Metasploit was out. A lot of the really big name tools were out, but there's been a lot of other tools created over the years, and then a lot more, I don't know, probably 5 years, it's got to where there's a more focus on some of the PowerShell related tools because of the Windows environments and Active Directory. So Active Directory become a lot more important for pen testers. When I got started, fortunately, I had an Active Directory background from being a sysadmin, but it didn't require as much experience for pen testers, but that's requiring more experience. The cloud thing is huge. A lot of companies are going fully to the cloud or they're doing hybrid. They've got some on-prem servers and then some servers in the cloud. So those are some of the things to look at. I really recommend focusing on cloud, anything you're doing, because security-wise, that's good. Pen testing, although some pen testers may have years of experience, a lot of them don't have the cloud experience. So understanding cloud pen test and do cloud security is very important.
So yeah, cloud is a really big area and good for pen testers. Although I'd say anyone in security understanding cloud's would be good because you look at a lot of your digital forensics stuff. A lot of people aren't trained on that. And as far as pen testing goes, cloud's not totally new, but companies are starting to do more cloud pen testing. So understanding that, especially if you're a newcomer coming in, there's a lot of veterans that don't know how to do cloud pen tests. So if you cloud and how to do cloud pen tests, that kind of gives you an edge and will help you get a job and make good money.
Is there anything else that you're seeing in the pen testing world that's new and fresh?
Well, one of the things is maybe not real new, but understanding API pen testing for your web app pen tests, because a lot more applications are using APIs because that way IoT devices are able to communicate with the same application. Mobile devices, a lot of cases, are using APIs. Someone that I highly respect in the cybersecurity community, Alyssa Knight, she does a lot of research on and does a lot of API pen testing. That's one of the areas that she recommends. So I'd say API is really big. And so, yeah, a lot of the IoT related stuff is good to know. That's the connected things have become more popular and stuff too. So those are some areas to look at. For so long, people were stuck on just, as far as pen testing go, just network and some application. But now it's the faster connectivity is with mobile devices with 5G and all this. People are able to communicate quicker. So more and more mobile connectivity. If you're a pen tester, learning how to do mobile application pen tests is good as well.
And what kind of got you into the pen testing world? What excites you about your career?
Yeah, what kind of got me into it to begin with is what a lot of people are drawn to is you're getting paid to hack for a living. So that was what really seemed cool. And just learning about some of the different tools when I was in application security, that's what really interested me. And the application side of things are really what seems interesting to me, because a lot of your networks, there could be variances in the way things are configured, but your applications could have all of pretty much the same components, but a different developer builds it, and there could be so many different things different about it. So it just kind of, the application world seems to steadily remain a challenge compared to some other areas that might get boring.
In terms of like your influencers, pen tester influencers, who do you follow? Who do you recommend folks follow? Who's the big five out there?
Yeah, there's some really cool ones to look at. A lot of the people, if you're into the red teaming stuff, like SpectreOps, Harmjoy from SpectreOps, and I would just get out there on Twitter, find SpectreOps and see Ryan Cobb works for SpectreOps. He's pretty sharp. There's a lot of people there that are really good. Vincent Yu, He's got a really good blog out there on red teaming related stuff. If you're into application security or web app pen testing or want to get into bug bounty, Nahamsek, he works at HackerOne. He's got some really good content. Stoke has some really good Hacker PhD. She's into bug bounty, and she's got a lot of good videos that are helpful for web app pen testers and bug bounty hunters. So those are some really good ones. Jason Haddix is someone I've followed for years, and that's really who I got familiar with bug bounties through Jason Haddix. But Twitter, that's a good place. You get out there and find the people that are really sharp and follow them, and you're going to find a lot of people that they communicate with and writing tools, and you'll find a lot more awesome people to follow.
Awesome. And, we were speaking earlier a little bit about like the differences between Twitter and LinkedIn. What would you say is like the strategy for folks wanting to leverage those two platforms? What would you say Twitter is best for, and what is LinkedIn best?
Twitter is going to be best because you don't have, unless someone locks their account, you can see, because with LinkedIn, you can control what people see on your profile and that sort of thing. So it's easier to share information more freely and get visibly seen, because you get out there and you post something on Twitter. If someone retweets it, your friends or something or organizations, you can tag them in your tweets and bring more visibility. If you're at a conference or something, a lot of people will put like and the conference Twitter handle or the conference Twitter name, let people know they're there at that conference. And LinkedIn's a little more professional. Like I've said earlier, you don't want to treat it like Facebook. You don't want to get on there, be careful the kind of pictures you post on there, because you don't want to come off as unprofessional. You don't want to take pictures of yourself out drunk somewhere because some potential employer sees that. That's also your personal social media stuff. Be careful what you put out there too, because some employers are asking to look at that stuff. And whether you agree with that or not, that's not cool. May not be cool for them to do that. But if they do see it, they're going to try to leverage this. So keep your LinkedIn professional. Any kind of projects you got going on, share them either place. Share your status with on Twitter on your study progress. If you got a certification, you can do the same thing on LinkedIn. But I'd say with Twitter, you're posting more frequently on the Friday follows, see who's being recommended to follow, and you can build your following that way. I know a guy on there that goes under the handle Makeshift. He helps run the Republic of Hackers Discord. And Dave has really done a lot of the Follow Friday stuff for retweeting other people's Follow Fridays and then doing Follow Fridays of different people to follow. And he's built up a pretty good following that way. And his Discord channel in a week or two ago broke 500. So just interacting with people. And someone that I heard some good advice from is Gary Vaynerchuk. He goes by Gary V. He's like super big into social media. A friend of mine told me about him back in 2012. He said, yeah, you need to check this guy out. I got a couple of his books, but one of the things he said about social media is to interact with your followers. So if you just put stuff out there and people respond, they don't know that you care or not. So if you show your followers that you care about what they think and what they say, interact with them, you're going to have a better response. And that's helped me a lot through Twitter and LinkedIn to interact with people. I mean, there could be conversations on Twitter. You see something, you can share your experience and interact, and that's a way to meet other people. And then, like I said just before, sharing resources.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I actually listened to one of his podcasts last night, and he was saying how he only really got his real break into entrepreneurship at the age of 34, or 34. He was helping his family with the family business being underpaid, working in a family business, trying to help his parents. And basically what he was saying is, don't rush into any profession just because you're under pressure or you think you have to crack it, as soon as you get out of college. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on the InfoSec entrance to the market. Perhaps the expectation of getting a job too quickly is not the right approach, and perhaps they should slow down, and maybe it would stabilize the ecosystem somewhat, because I don't know if this rush to get into cyber is creating more problems or less problems. Perhaps people should take a bit more time and get more trained up. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just going to depend on the person. And I honestly think if you feel like you're ready and you're at a point where you could do a job, then it doesn't hurt to to apply for jobs, and the more jobs you apply for, the better your chances. If you go out and apply for 1 or 2 jobs a month at that rate, it's going to take a long time to find a job. So it's just like in sales. The more people you talk to, the higher your probability of selling something. So I really would be, if you're wanting to get into it and you're ready, then be applying for jobs. Just get out there, and you don't have to fit the profile 100%, because a lot of times the job descriptions are like pie in the sky, kind of impossible candidates that they're not going to get. Just apply for it. You'd be surprised at what you get. And I really try to not discourage people, because people doubt themselves enough. And so I've had students before that I really didn't think were ready for a pen testing job, but I wasn't going to tell them that and discourage them from trying, because like I said, we have enough barriers, and we're enough things preventing us from getting started, that we don't need to be, impediment ourselves. But yeah, as far as trying to get out there, if you think you're ready, go ahead and go out there, apply. I think you'll do fine. But yeah, you can wait. And another thing is don't pressure yourself. If you've got a job, you're doing well, then there's something to be said about taking time and preparing and getting educated to the level you need to be, or where you feel comfortable at, to pursue jobs. So kind of a couple different ways to look at it. But a lot of times people put pressure on themselves too much and unreasonable. You got to give yourself a break, that when you're trying to learn something, if you're going through some of these certification processes like the OSCP, can be extremely difficult. If you don't pass it the first 1 or 2 times, keep trying, just be persistent, because in this field, persistence or any career is key. If you just keep at it, you're eventually going to get in. And as I mentioned, applying with a lot of different companies, there may be 100 companies that would not give you a chance, but there may be one company that does. There's maybe this one hiring manager that likes your personality. You may be a culture fit. So just keep trying until you find something. But like I said, be patient and give yourself, grace. You don't have to forgive yourself, and let yourself just do it, and don't put too much pressure.
And perhaps as we come to close on today's episode, I would love to hear your thoughts on cyber burnout. Have you experienced that? Can you provide thoughts and solutions on preventing it, and maybe where you see it the most?
Yeah, I've experienced that in some jobs. And then sometimes maybe I'm doing some kind of side work, or doing a lot of studying. Back when I was first getting started in pen testing, I was doing a lot of study. So the main thing I would do, and I like to use the sports analogy, because when you look at it, you think of it, it's not exactly the same thing, but you can think of your brain as a muscle. So you're educating, this is like you're working out, you're building that muscle and strengthening that muscle, but you can overtrain muscles, and sometimes it can make you sick if you train too hard. So you want to make sure that you approach it like an athlete would. You want to put in some time away from study, some time away from work, get away from the monitor, get away from your mobile device, just take a break from technology, get out in nature. If you're not into meditating, just taking a walk out in nature somewhere and just relaxing is kind of, relaxing effect. It's almost like meditation. Like last year when the lockdown was on during the pandemic, that was one of the things that helped keep me sane at night. We would go for walks, and just seeing some of the different wildlife in nature. Even though we're right in the middle of the city, we had seen coyotes and owls and frogs and different rabbits and different wildlife that was cool to watch. So just, make sure you're taking time and keep your mental health in mind. Make sure to take breaks when you're studying and stuff. You can only study for so long, and you're not going to absorb anymore. So you have to take a break. So schedule in breaks. And then it has some days that you just get away from it. Make sure to spend time with your friends and family, because that's time you don't get back. When you have young children and stuff, later on, if you're not spending enough quality time with those family members, you're going to regret it. So make sure to take breaks.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anything else before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, one of the things I would like to share that, a couple years ago was inspired by someone that was a reverse engineer, and he had got into pen testing. He had to learn assembly language. And when he was in college, he took an assembly class, and he just, it was one of the classes that I don't think it was hands-on, but he did well enough to pass the class. And then he had to go back and learn assembly later on, because he really didn't learn it. So one of the things I'd say is take your time learning as you go along. If you're doing the OSCP, don't rush it and try to get through and get just past the certification. Learn. That is the main purpose of those types of trainings or anything like that, don't try to rush through the training. Take the time to make sure you assimilate that and you can use those skills later on. Because if you don't, you're going to go back and have to learn it all over again some other time.
Thank you so much, Phillip. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I really appreciate your time and your insights. If people would like to reach out and get in touch with you, what's the best platforms? I'm assuming it's Twitter and LinkedIn.
That's it. And my DMs are open, and I usually follow up pretty quickly to people's DMs.
Okay, perfect. So we'll be sure to add those in the show notes. So again, thank you so much for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes. And to the rest of you, we'll see you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Cybersecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing or following through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.